Alright, so in 1984, Irem employee Takashi Nishiyama was assigned lead designer of Spartan X, based on the Jackie Chan joint Meals on Wheels. This game was also known as Kung Fu Master internationally. It's believed to be the first side-scrolling brawler ever created. Now, his talents didn't go unnoticed, as he was soon picked up by the corporate spies, the vultures, if you will, at Capcom, who had him oversee the production of various shooting games during the mid-80s. It was then, in 1987, that he'd get his chance to perfect his ideas fostered by Spartan X, which is another name for that game. A video game that conveyed the frantic excitement of a martial arts movie, but this time he had the power of the 16-bit Motorola 65,000 fueling his project, which would eventually be known as Street Fighter 1. While Street Fighter 1 has indeed aged poorly, it was a watershed moment in gaming, codifying into law the still fledgling genre's conventions and creating one of the most successful and prolific brands in gaming that perseveres to this day. Street Fighter 1 introduced a host of mechanics never before seen in games, such as command inputs that access different attacks. These special moves were something Nishiyama had personally oversaw, going so far as to design the now iconic fireball motion himself. He even insisted on using an 8-way stick and 6-button setup, like some sort of omnipotent god directing the sands of fate themselves. Several years later, Capcom would set the world ablaze with their legendary Street Fighter 2. Nishiyama, however, was no longer with the company, having jumped ship to good old SNK, where he was toiling away on his own personal vision of what the true successor to Street Fighter 1 should be. Nishiyama went into Fatal Fury with a burning desire to accomplish what he hadn't with Street Fighter 1, namely making the game feel cinematic and creating vibrant, living characters for players to grow fond and attached to. That's why matches in Fatal Fury, especially later installments in the franchise, always start with visually impressive establishing shots and lore-building banter between the characters to provide context for the fighting, more so than Street Fighter 2 ever did. Fatal Fury is in fact one of the most fleshed-out expanded universes in the genre, which in addition to its own 8 installments also shares continuity with Art of Fighting and Samurai Showdown. King of Fighters is a separate canon, but Fatal Fury's legacy is still a huge part of that game's DNA. Fatal Fury's gameplay is very unique, introducing a plane switching mechanic that allows players to move in and out of the camera, essentially doubling the amount of screen real estate, and creating new defensive and offensive tactics for players to enjoy. Fatal Fury also allowed for 2-player co-op in 2v1 matches against the AI, beating Street Fighter Alpha's dramatic battle to the punch by half a decade. Unlike Street Fighter 2, which focused heavily on normals and pokes, treating specials as tools for zoning primarily, Fatal Fury continued with Street Fighter 1's philosophy of special moves being, special. They're the star of the show, big damage attacks that the entire metagame revolves around. Little known fact, many Japanese companies during the 80s, such as Taito, Sega, and SNK, drew all of their art assets using a 20-button joystick, manually scrolling to a specific pixel, and then toggling through a variety of shade, color depth, and hue options. I shit you not. By the 90s, most companies had upgraded to what we consider more conventional kit, but SNK continued to do their sprite work for years, well into the 90s, because they were too cheap to buy mice, I suppose. Music in Fatal Fury and SNK's other works is very diverse, thanks in no small part to SNK's eclectic sound design team, each coming from a different background and lending their knowledge of their genre of specialty to the game's soundtrack, resulting in a varied buffet of sound, ranging from the Brazilian rhythm of the Pow Pow Cafe, Duck King's then trendy New Jack Swing track, traditional Chinese stringed arrangements for Tung Fu Ru. This thematic atmosphere-building score really tied together the whole kung fu film motif, and the live-action commercials SNK commissioned during the 90s really drove a nail into cementing Fatal Fury as the action-packed B-movie of fighting games. Fatal Fury 1's development started months before Street Fighter 2's release, but the timing was pretty unfortunate. Many people believe Fatal Fury was a clone trying to capitalize off of Street Fighter 2's success. This, of course, was not the case at all, since Fatal Fury 1 is more of a proper sequel to Street Fighter 1 than Street Fighter 2 ever was. Even though Street Fighter 2 is obviously the better game, its design went in quite a different direction from Fatal Fury, with Street Fighter 2 being all about head-to-head player-versus-player action, whereas Fatal Fury yearned to immerse player in its fiction and atmosphere. The stigma of being a clone would haunt the franchise for years to come, but that didn't stop Fatal Fury's influence from sending shockwaves through the gamosphere, if you will. FF1 was ported to every console imaginable. It saw 7 sequels, had 2 sister franchises, one of which lasted even longer, a spin-off series. Maybe you've heard of it. It's called King of Fighters. Fatal Fury characters have appeared in various crossovers with all different companies. There's obviously CVS2 and SVC Chaos, but there's also like Terry Bogard appears in Fighting EX Layer. Mai Shiranui is in Dead or Alive. We got Geese and Tekken. They're everywhere, man. Fatal Fury is the face of SNK, and once again, just like he did for Irem and Capcom before them, Nishiyama defined SNK and then said, "My work here is done," and rode off into the sunset. Nishiyama eventually left SNK for the new millennium, founded Dimps in March of 2000. Dimps started making the highly praised Sonic Advance, the first Sonic game on a Nintendo console, among other games, eventually securing the role as Street Fighter IV's developer later that decade. It's funny how cyclical things are, huh? So anyway, that's about the size of it in terms of Fatal Fury. I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to like and subscribe and maybe flag me for something. You know, do it as a joke. You know, I'm promoting terrorism right now because I mentioned Geese Howard. He's a bad man. He killed Jeff Bogard. What an asshole. So anyway, on the screen now you see I got Patreon. I've got a store, the Butler Boutique. You can buy some hilarious meme shirts. We got some cat mugs, all sorts of fun things. You could buy those. I also have a Patreon. The Patreon is great. $5 a month will give you. You get to choose what fighting game we're gonna do next for our casual sets. You know, we'll play whatever, we don't care, it's all good. We'll play Joy Mech Fight for Famicom, if you want us to do that, or maybe some anonymous Super Nintendo fighting game no one's ever fucking heard of. It don't matter. Whatever you want, baby. And you know what, if you slip me a 20, then guess what, whatever you want. Anything. Basically, it's a commission. So you do that, I will be checking my metrics to make sure that, some metric stuff is going on. I'm going off script now. I don't write the end slates. I just freeball them. I love freeballing. You know, you get a nice crossbreed.